Good morning and welcome to Euromoney's Finance is Female, a series of events in which key figures in the industry are sharing with us their expertise on crucial topics around diversity and gender balance. I'm delighted to be joined today by one of the most experienced women in finance, Luisa Gomez Bravo, who is Global Head of Corporate and Investment Banking at BBVA. Before we start today's discussion, a short disclaimer. This event is for information purposes only. We're not giving investment or transaction advice. All the views are expressed on this session are those of the participants, not of Euromoney. All comments are public and on the record, and all content is copyright Euromoney Institutional Investor 2020. So, on with today's discussion. Luisa, welcome to Euromoney. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here and to be able to share, what we're seeing in the topic of diversity, which is really dear to our hearts, dear to BBVA's hearts, and dear, obviously, to my heart as well. So glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, we're here to discuss women in finance, and obviously you do have a unique perspective on this. You've made a very successful career in one of the most male-dominated parts of the business, corporate and investment banking. How tough has it been for you in your career as a woman? Are there sort of many gender-specific challenges you feel you faced?
I think one of the, I don't know if it's positive or negative, but I think that I've never really felt that I was conditioned in my career by gender, obviously by me being a woman. I've been working at the bank for nearly 20 years. Before that, in investment banking in London, in American investment banks. And I think, or I've maybe naively believed that that if you work hard enough, you're lucky as well, that you can push through. I think that after, if you look back in hindsight, you start understanding that there are obviously some maybe subconscious or not necessarily directly ceilings. But it has been, I have a feeling that it has taken longer maybe than with other male people, but but you never know. I don't want to make a judgment of, but there are many decisions involved, and I don't think one of them is specifically that you're a woman. I think there are many subconscious elements that go into those ceilings that we may have. But I personally don't think that I was conditioned specifically. But it is true that when you're in a male-dominated culture, it is, maybe a little bit, complicated.
So why do you think then that, I mean, it hasn't been that much of a barrier for you? Perhaps it has made life slightly more difficult, but it hasn't been a long-term barrier for you. But why are there so few women in corporate investment banking then?
Well, that's a very good question. I'd love to know that. I think that at least what I see, it's a little different when you're looking at the capital markets oriented part of the business and the global markets part of the business, than when you're looking more at the corporate banking side of the business or the transactional banking side of the business. I think in the corporate banking and in the transactional banking world, there has been more, let's say, more female candidates throughout the different levels in the organization, at least the one that I know. I think global markets specifically and capital markets related business, it has been challenging. And I think, part of it, at least years ago, it was more the culture in, especially in the global markets areas, was an aggressive culture. Let's say it like it is, and I think, women didn't feel comfortable in that. And if you have an option, then why would you want to specifically work in that type of environment if you have other alternatives? But even today, what I think is more surprising, when I am obviously working on these issues within the bank, within my area of responsibility, I still find it surprising that out of the CVs that we get for positions in the sales and trading side, 90% is male and 10% only is female. So even today, we're seeing a dearth of candidates wanting to go into the sales and trading world. I think that obviously there are maybe unconscious biases as well in the way we are hiring people. We're trying to switch the wording of the applications, and I think at the end of the day, my conclusion is that women tend to be perfectionists when they look at a job profile. So if they don't meet each of the specifications that job description implies, they think that they can't do the job. Men don't have that feeling. They just go ahead. And when you look for a job and you say, okay, I need an expert in whatever, a woman tends to say, okay, I'm not an expert. I've done so-and-so training. I think I've done a lot of training. I've worked a lot in this, but expert, I'm not an expert. And a man says, yeah, an expert. I did an online course. I'll go for it. So that, I think, ourselves, we don't realize many times that the first condition is ourselves. We are the first ones to condition our career paths. And that is these unconscious biases. So that we're trying to work with all the female talent to try and ensure that they have the visibility and that they feel comfortable in trying to aspire for those options, not only for entering a new job, but even especially for promotions as well. So I think sometimes it's even ourselves that can that hinder our own progression.
But I mean, do you think that is actually something that it's often presented as something that is perhaps more a female mindset, but is it actually a female mindset, or is it simply based on experience? I mean, the fact is, I always find it amusing, depressing, when people say they look at a room full of 60 men and there's one woman and they say, oh, that woman must just have got there because of her gender. I mean, experience tells women that they won't get there unless they are better than the men and that they have to do more. It's not necessarily unrealistic.
Yeah.
Women think like that.
No, I think it's sort of a catch-22. But I like to look at these things. Obviously, when you're running teams that are male and female, and you have to try and look at things from an objective perspective and looking at data. So I'm very data-driven, because otherwise you're talking from an emotional angle. And when you're running teams, you need to look at data. And at the beginning of the year, we're running a hiring process, and we did an A/B pilot test. So we had wording, a specific wording in one of in pilot A, and a specific wording in pilot B. We had 30% more female applying for the same position just because of the wording of how we were wording the position. So instead of using the word expert, we said somebody that So I look at the data. And I say, okay, obviously there are emotionals. There's the condition of how we ensure that our female talent sees that those preconditions of going into a room and thinking, oh, that's our job to try and avoid them. And there's cultural work behind that. But looking at the data, I think there are so many in our talent and culture processes, in the way we hire, in the way we are, working in the teams, that in the visibility we give to the female talent in meetings with clients, all that adds to everything. So it's, the cause and effect is difficult. It's just a series of things that we need to do, and the data needs to guide our decisions as well.
And within the workplace, do you think that there is, I know a lot of banks now have female networks across the businesses. Do you think that really can make a difference and move the needle?
I do, yes. I think that at the end of the day, you have to do things that are top down, obviously. But there's, there's a lot of, even, when you look at the global, footprint, it's not the same in Mexico as it is in Spain or the US. The level of, advance, at the end of the day, it's culture. The level of advance is very different, the US and Mexico, for example. So you have to really ensure that more initiatives are driven precisely by what we call business resource groups, groups of, not just females, but also many, men are also involved, because there is obviously, I think, a recognized value in diversity across the organization. And having the male input is relevant when you're looking at across the board and how to promote diversity. So we don't make it exclusive to females, but we do put a lot of effort in these business resource groups across the geographies and the business areas. And we've also launched a think tank to promote more and more initiatives. And it's these, these people that are providing input to the top management as to how to gear our diversity initiatives in the group.
So on the sort of diversity topic, obviously there's been a lot of discussion around this recently in the light of the pandemic, and particularly when it comes to women and working from home and what that's meant for women. Now, we first spoke about this a couple of months into the pandemic, and I think at that time there was quite a lot of optimism around the working from home, and this might level the playing field for women. And I don't know about you, but certainly sort of 4 months later, at the moment, I'm talking to a lot of women who are pretty exhausted after 6 months of working from home while also managing all the childcare and the domestic duties and homeschooling. Is there any sense in which this is working out for women?
Well, I hope so. I tend to be positive because not just on the women's side, and now I'll evolve a little bit on that. It's I think on the men's side, the fact that when we were in lockdown, both the men and the women were in lockdown. The feedback that I have actually from men is that they didn't realize, how much work goes into, taking care of the children, being at home, whatever. And I think the conciliation aspect that, there's a responsibility both for men and women, and the fact that you have to have work streams regarding diversity that also promote conciliation in our male talent is very relevant. And I think that this confinement has served for actually addressing the fact that conciliation has to work. It's not only a problem of women, it's also something positive for men. And actually some men have valued positively spending more time at home, more time with the kids, working, but actually, living a little bit more within, your family life. I think for the women, really, it's been exhausting. I think it's true. Hopefully, going forward, we will keep a balance of working from home and working in the office, which I think is positive for all, but not just for the woman. My main concern here is that we go back to a situation where working from home is associated to women and the rest is actually working in the office. I think what we're trying to do is actually looking forward, and even beyond the pandemic, by the way, even when we have vaccines and hopefully we'll put behind us the COVID situation, I think it's an opportunity to change the way we're working and to leapfrog some of these conciliation initiatives and engaging everybody. So it's not just a women thing working from home. And I think that mentality-wise, we're already there. So now we just need to ensure that we're executing in that way and that we avoid, going the inertia of going back to how we were working before with regards to working from home.
Are there other ways in which the pandemic has affected the role of women in the workplace? I mean, in terms of, I think I've heard some people say that in terms of visibility, it's easier for women to perhaps be heard when in the virtual environment than sometimes in the physical environment.
I haven't experienced that. It's true that again, it depends on the number of people assisting, meetings. Typically, when you're in the workspace, you tend to overcrowd meetings, because you're there. So, and I think that in that case, maybe, it's more difficult to be heard. Let's call it that way. When there's meetings with a lot of people. When you engage in video calls, you try to make it with less people because it's, even though technology allows you to connect a lot of people, you don't tend to connect a lot of people because in origin that's not what you want to do. And there is an opportunity for women to be heard within that context. So to me, it's aside from the fact that you tend to, and it's true that again, this is another one of those unconscious biases, which is a fact that in meetings we tend to listen more to male than female. Again, I'm positive in the sense that maybe it's more technology wise in the context of the meetings, and you feel less coerced from your peers sitting there and looking at you in a certain way or whatever. I think you have opportunities to make yourself heard when you are using good technology and good drivers for that sense. So I wouldn't say that that's a negative condition by itself.
Well,
I think my main concern is really the junior female talent. I think working from home for an extended period of time, or as a model, is a problem for juniors in general, and specifically for female juniors, where you need more mentoring, more coaching. When you take them to a meeting, well, you come with me, listen in, or let's go to see a client, and that interaction, if you're working from home, tends to disengage, juniors and female juniors. And when you have a problem because you don't have at the base of the pyramid enough women to be able to scale up and promote and whatever, that is a cause of concern for me, because I need that junior female talent to make sure that I can then move up in the promotion scheme. So preserving that in the context of working from home is a challenge.
What do you think, what can be done to meet that challenge?
Well, I think that right now is something that we are working from. In Spain, we already started to incorporate people in our rotation scheme back in July. I wanted to have the right mentality in terms of going back to sort of a hybrid model. And I think right now we need to start defining, again, a new working, model. In the past, we were able to work from home because we had the technology to be able to work from home. It doesn't mean that we changed the way we were working. If we're going to keep, at least for quite a long time, a hybrid model, and I think there's benefits, again, even for that hybrid model moving on, I think we need to change the way we know how to work, and specifically address the junior situation. So we're looking at that in the organization to try and establish specific programs, or maybe the rotation schedules are different for our juniors. Maybe we need them to come in more often to the workplace as we're rotating in and out. So we're working right now on a specific plan for juniors, and within that the junior female talent, to understand their needs.
So what advice would you, for junior women, I mean, what advice would you give from your position to women who either are starting their career in finance or are thinking about a career in finance?
Well, I would say that I would encourage them to look at finance as as an area of opportunity. I think finance and working in finance for women provides a very diversified career path. You can there's many different alternatives to working, from not just investment banking or corporate banking, consumer finance, retail banking, insurance, asset management is so I think that when you are starting out, typically, or at least what happened to me, you don't really know what a job is. You don't really know what investment banking is. So I would say that going into finance allows you the possibility of having good mobility, within finance and outside of finance, because the CV that you build, I think, is obviously very useful even for the corporate world. So I think if you want optionality in your career, starting in finance gives you that optionality. And I would definitely invest time and effort in gaining that optionality in a world where optionality is very, very relevant.
But specifically, if you had a young woman who wants to work in investment banking, and I mean, I used to work in investment banking back in the day. When I started, I wanted to work as a trader, and every single person I spoke to in investment banking said you should be in sales because you're a woman. If it was me today starting out and saying I want to work on a trading desk, what advice would you give me?
I would say that there are opportunities in terms of again, risk management and trading that are very interesting. I think the tools, the development, the learning process, the training is amazing, and that is something that you're going to have in your background. Culture wise, I think things are different now, definitely, that back in the day. The culture within the trading teams is different, and it needs still to obviously develop. But the trading people right now, at least the traders that are in the floor, are very different than the ones that were before. And it's a one team effort. It's you have a sense of belonging to a team. They work in putting forward proposals. It's very it's if you have the ambition to be able to differentiate yourself. I think actually being a trader it allows you pretty much a differentiation. Probably across corporate investment banking, the place where you can differentiate yourself more, again, or less, that differentiation actually takes place more in sales and trading, or in trading, than in any other parts of finance. So if you have that mindset and you like to, that's something that you're considering, I think that would be an excellent place to start as well.
And you think that as a woman, would you say that somebody entering banking now, would you say that would you tell young women that they could, if they wanted to, they could make it to the top in banking?
Yeah. I think that if you obviously, again, if you are invested in your career, you can make it to the top of banking. Today is, again, very different than the days before. We still need to make an effort to make sure that the promotion path is cleared out of unconscious biases, and as I mentioned before, how we word things, how we run our selection processes, and so on and so forth. If I have a 90-10% ratio, that's unacceptable. So I need to go and say, no, you have to bring me more female candidates. So obviously there's still work to do on the corporate side, on our as employers. But I think that today we're all very conscious of the value of diversity, and we will be promoting diversity, obviously, throughout the promotion space. Not because we want to favor women versus men, but because we think there's value in diversity. And that's what we need to do. So, it's not a question of favoring women versus men, it's a question of adding diversity. And that today is a clear strategic priority.
Fantastic. Well, I wish I were 20 years younger. It sounds like it would be a much better option.
We're trying to favor diversity throughout the different age groups. So
I think I'm
just the young talent.
Probably a little old to start on to restart on a trading desk, but yes, it's a very good. I think it sounds like there's a much better outlook for young women today, which is very encouraging. Well, I could happily continue this interview for a lot longer, but I think that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. But thank you very much, Luisa, for joining us and for a fascinating discussion. It's been really great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you also to all our viewers who are watching this. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And in the meantime, take care, stay safe, and goodbye from Euromoney.